If you could have a coach help you identify and focus on what's important, would that accelerate your success? If you answered yes, then this podcast is for you. Each week, my guests, professional coaches, will share one actionable piece of advice to help you level up wherever you need it most. My name is Chris Ippolito, and welcome to the Get Coached podcast. Hi, Carl.
Hey, good morning. How you doing, Chris?
Great. How are you?
Fabulous. It's a wonderful Saturday and life is good.
It is. So welcome to the Get Coached podcast. So I wanted to chat with you about purpose and in a broad sense is really how does someone work in that purpose? So they may have a personal purpose and mission in life, and they've maybe not been able to work that into their business, or vice versa. They'd envisioned this purpose for their business, but maybe in life they're not living true to it. And one of the things that you help your clients with is really getting those two things together and in alignment so that their personal and their business purposes start aligning. So I was hoping you could share a little bit about kind of your mindset around that and the importance of that alignment.
Yeah, it's something that I always use as the starting point for my coaching engagements. And I've got a new group that I've started up, and this is like the starting point is first clarify what is my business mission or values or purpose, or different people talk about it different ways, and then the business as well. And just by writing it down, I find that people get a lot of clarity from that, because, we all have like, oh, I wish that this would go better in my life. I'm not happy with how that has happened. My career has gone a little bit different and I don't know if I'm happy with, right? You have all this stuff, but it's really hard to articulate. And that's one of the reasons, people work with somebody like a coach, is that gives you somebody to bounce off of. But it's also helpful to write it down. So on the personal side, you have things like, what would I want people to say at my funeral? How do I want to be remembered, or on my tombstone? Now that's like all very depressing and everything. But
it's a little dark. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it can be. But once you get into it, you find out that it's maybe not as depressing, because you realize that I'm actually a person with value and purpose in this world, right? And that's the purpose of the exercise. But things like, if you've got, say, a religious basis to your life, then has my maker given me a purpose, or do I play a role in society? Maybe it's about the skills and the abilities that I bring to this world. I'm going to be the best at this kind of thing because apparently I have skill at it and I have interest as well. So, how cool would it be if that became a core part of who I am, right? So that's on the personal side. Okay. Now on the business side, when you're forming a business, it's kind of similar, but we use a little bit different language. Like, what do I want the role of this company to be to others, and to me as founder or me as leader, and to us as a group of people? Even if I'm one person business today, if I think about it as I could be a group of people in the future, okay? And so if we together have a purpose, how would I explain that to other people? Okay, so is it about bringing out new technologies to solve problems that have troubled humanity forever? Okay, that's cool. Maybe it's about, I've worked with people who articulate this as, my purpose is to give wonderful jobs in a respectful environment for my employees and the people that I work with. So it's kind of inward centric, but how cool is that? or it could be outward. My job is like save the whales, or we're going to do something like that.
Or somebody like Elon Musk, who says like his mission is really to save, he says it, I think not in these words, but to like save humanity. When you look at each of his individual companies, SpaceX, Tesla, oh geez, I'm drawing a blank on the other ones. Anyways, they're all mission, like they have a purpose of solving a big problem at a global scale, which ultimately is to save the human race and human species.
Yeah. And what was the energy that's brought out from you and me in an example like that? Whether or not you like Elon Musk, doesn't matter. It's like, man, I can see that there's some inspiration in there. Okay. I could see why people that are along for the journey love being a part of that story. I could see why it would attract customers to say, the Tesla car isn't just about having an electric car. I mean, it's cool and all that, and I've been doing investigations on my own, but it's really about changing the way we think about transportation and energy usage and stuff like that. It's like, wow, that's like deep stuff.
Yeah.
So that's such a great example, and you see other people that do similar kinds of things, and it doesn't have to be big and world-changing and audacious. It might be just, I would like to help homelessness in my community. Okay, now I'm producing a marinara sauce. Okay, what does that have to do with homelessness in the community?
Yeah.
Right. Well, maybe it's about the way I partner up with people and nonprofits that have the same kind of thing, and we can use the profit from the company that I make into helping to address that need. And we can do things behind the scenes to work with the homeless community.
Yeah.
There's a million kinds of things, and that's the kind of stuff that really turns people on. And when it syncs up with your personal purpose as a founder, as owner, as leader, now all of a sudden, when you go to work in the morning, you're excited and motivated and energized and have lots of ideas. When you're explaining it to other people, you tend to suck them into your story, right? And that doesn't mean that everything that you do in your life is about the business. I have other things in my life, like my family, like my spiritual development, stuff like that. And there's a little bit of connection with my coaching business, but it's not the reason why I'm in my coaching business. It's not that strong. And so you want to draw out the points of synergy and the points of conflict. And I know this is a struggle for a lot of entrepreneurs, because when you're starting out something, it sucks up a lot of time and energy. And I get that, it has for me as well. And that's okay. But if part of your personal priorities are that I want to have my job, my work, take up no more than 40 hours a week or something. Okay, that's a work-life balance thing, right? Now, but being an entrepreneur tends to suck up 100 hours a week. And so what do I want to do to resolve that tension? Okay, I may say, well, I will agree to do the 100 hours a week for the first 6 months, but then I've got to start reining it back, because otherwise my family is going to suffer, and my inspiration and energy is going to suffer as well.
Right.
Or we could say, well, maybe I want to take on a partner so that we can share the load, so that it's not quite as much work for either of us. Right? There's ways to resolve that, but actually working on it intentionally and saying, this is what it is. This is what I want to achieve. This is where I'm at and the resources that I have. Okay, now let's start working on the solutions to that. And so
right.
when I'm working with people who are starting stuff out, I was, creating a new business or going from a startup level to the next level. Those are the kind of things we get into because typically people are running into tensions. And that's fine. It is what it is. Let's be honest about it. Let's take it head on and let's work on it. And guess what? You work on it and you usually make progress.
Yeah. It sounds like then what I'm kind of thinking about it almost in a different way is that it sounds like when you're working with a client and trying to uncover purpose and get alignment, it's almost going in a different direction of helping them step back a little bit and broaden their view almost, so that they aren't so just laser focused on that. I need to grow my business. I'm putting in 80 to 100 hours a week and just work, where it's like, well, hang on, let's step back a little bit and just make sure that that direction you're plowing forward in is actually in line with what is your core values or your purpose. That's kind of the sense I get, is you're almost trying to like slow them down a little bit and go like, hold on, let's make sure we're even going in the right direction before you go so far in that direction that you've got to like 180, go back and find a different path.
Yeah, or you fly your business into the ground, or you get burned out, right? But you're exactly right. That's what it is, and that's often why people work with a coach, right? Is to help me step back, and because if all it is about working on the micro issues. Okay, that employee really made me mad today. They said something that set me off, and it's like, how do I resolve that micro problem? That's fine. Okay, it's good to have somebody to bounce ideas off of in a confidential context, and that's cool. But what you often find out is that it's actually much bigger than that, much more comprehensive. And let's spend a few minutes thinking about, why is it that I have an environment where things are brittle and people are fighting with each other and we're at each other's necks because it's high stress and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
Let's think about that for a little bit. Is there a way that I can reduce the stress? Maybe it's about the people that I'm hiring. Maybe it's about the way that I set goals and measure success. I don't know. But, all of these things are interconnected. And that's one of the things that makes it challenging. So often when, I'm having a session with somebody, we may start off with that micro issue. And then quite often we'll end up backing up and saying, is there a pattern here? Is there some kind of driver that we should pay attention to? And what does it say about the larger aspect of what's going on in me and in my business? Maybe the core issue comes down to the fact that because I'm working 100 hours a week, I am brittle and I overreact when somebody comes to me with a problem. Then I I verbally punch them in the face
Right. They
as
just
a result
blow
of
up
that. Right.
They're exhausted.
Right. We do this, that guys, we're human, this is part of the human journey. And so, part of my role is to help people to step back, to think a little bit more calmly, more holistically, move away from just action into a little bit more of the planning part of it. But it's very individualistic. I don't have a formula for it.
Yeah, obviously, because every person's unique, their situation's unique and whatnot. I'm just wondering though, when let's paint a picture here as far as like the audience is that type of entrepreneur who has been doing what they're doing for a little while, and they're the ones that have been plowing just forward and putting in those crazy hours, growing their business, and they're having success, and maybe they're even building a bit of a team. But now all of a sudden, like you said, there's all these like little micro things that are popping up that are caught, like fires. Actually, let's use that analogy.
Good.
There's a bunch of fires coming up, and they feel like, oh, all I'm doing is putting out these fires. And then maybe whether it's with a coach or on their own, they step back and they kind of look and they go, I'm starting to see a bit of a pattern, and maybe they even self-identify it. But what if it is this, like, how do they go about course correcting almost? So if they're maybe 5 years into the business, they've built this small team, but there's this bit of like negative culture happening, and like, how do they root out that problem? Like, how, obviously you can't just like yank it out, because first off, we don't even know what it is. Maybe it's an individual, maybe it's a process, maybe it's a corporate mindset that's been built up over those years. So what would be that first step they would want to take to help get the company back on course to what they had originally envisioned, and getting it more in line with that original purpose that they have?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a fabulous question, because this is very, very common. A lot of people run into it, and it's very natural. So first thing is, don't beat yourself up too much. It's okay to be human. But the exercise of stepping back, I often find that you said original purpose that they had, or mission or whatever, that people never really articulated it that much. Okay, that it was in verbal space between people to say, oh, we should do this. Yeah, we should do this. We think there's opportunity. There's a need for this, right? But it's really, really useful to say, what would happen if we actually just wrote that down? And, right now we're just going to show it to ourselves. We're not going to make it marketing pretty to show to the outside world. This is just for us, or for me. And, okay, so what is it that I wanted originally? Now, what do I want now? It's 5 years later, or 1 year, whatever. So time has lapsed. We've discovered a number of things. I've got some new skills that I've developed. We've discovered that the market has moved on. We hired employees, and of course, employees are never what we had originally envisioned, because people are people. So, what is it that we would like now? All right. And you see that I'm using kind of gentle language around this. It's not, I'm not saying, what do you want now? Okay. It's like, no, let's open it up, and, a lot of things are possible. So what is it that we want now? Where are the points of synergy and tension with personal goals? Okay. If you've got a small employee team, it could be good to have a discussion at some point about, are we all having some kind of balance between our role in the business and our personal goals? Very good discussion to have. But first, as a leader, you would want to do that for yourself, so that you can say, all right, am I taking my life where I want to take it? However specific or vague that is. Am I getting burned out? Am I making the contribution that I think I want to make? And that's the kind of thing why it's useful to talk it over with a coach, or if not a coach, then what you want to look for is somebody who will listen honestly, echo back a little bit, and be supportive. Okay. So if you have a confidential friend that can play that role, a lot of people don't, because this is why people don't like to have this discussion with their spouse, because when you open up that kind of stuff to your spouse, then they start worrying about, oh my God, are you telling me that the business is going down the tubes and we're going to lose our house, and we're going to be homeless, and, right? I mean, it sets off a whole lot of stuff. Besides, you love and care for your spouse, and you don't want to worry them about things that really aren't their problem. You're thinking of it as my problem. So this is why opening it up to your spouse. Some people can do that. I've worked with married partners in business that can have that kind of discussion. It can be a little tough sometimes, But often it's easier to go to somebody else that you would trust, keep it confidential, probe in and have it be honest. Okay, so it means asking maybe some tougher questions than you might be willing to ask yourself.
Yeah.
And be supportive. Okay, to not say, no, you're an idiot. That's a stupid goal that you have. Okay, that's not a useful conversation to have, because the whole rest of the world is telling you that. They're telling you you're an idiot and you're doing things wrong and creating problems. So
Yeah.
that's what the rest of the world does. But you need somebody that can be confidential. Sometimes mastermind groups
I was
or
gonna,
stuff
yeah, I
like
was
that.
gonna, I
Yeah,
was
I've
gonna
seen
bring that up.
some awesome groups that people have put together where, we have 6 people who we have an agreement. We're all going to support and trust each other. Whatever we say is not going to go outside this room. Okay. And so that forms ground rules. And then if people do that, it can be fabulous, because then you also get some diversity of viewpoints,
Yeah.
which can be helpful at some points. If you're feeling like stuck, is like, I can't figure this out, I don't know what to do. It's like, give me some ideas. Well, if you have half a dozen people, maybe you get more ideas, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Really, it's just making sure you surround yourself with people that you can trust.
Mm-hmm.
And they themselves are like, they almost have, I always like the idea of you find a relationship where they themselves are uh, invested in you in a capacity, usually financially,
Mm-hmm.
as well as emotionally. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
have just the emotional, that goes to the story of kind of like you were saying about talking to the spouse who's not in the business but relies on the success of that business. There is some financial investment there, but there's almost too much of an emotional investment. Whereas a mastermind group or a coach or a good friend, there's some emotional investment there, but maybe that's where a good friend might not be a good fit, because they're almost like too emotionally invested. Whereas a
Right.
coach,
Depends on the relationship.
yeah, whereas a coach and a mastermind, I mean, I'm sure they like you.
Well,
But
and another alternative that I've seen used very successfully is to have a mentor.
yeah.
So mentor would be similar to the coach relationship, but usually with a mentor, they're giving you advice to
Yeah.
say, go this direction because when I did it, that worked for me, right? And so sometimes that's a very applicable thing, especially if you're looking to follow somebody else's path. But
Yeah.
if you're looking to create your own path, um, and be much more self-driven, then often that's what a coach or a small trusting group can do.
Yeah. It's really about surrounding yourself with people who want to see you succeed
Yeah, yeah.
authentically. Because I've myself personally have not seen this or experienced it, but I've heard stories of where somebody's working towards a business and they're building a business, and some of the people that are closest to them, friends or family, though they say they're supporting them, their actions don't necessarily reflect that. Whereas if you're surrounding yourself with other entrepreneurs who want to genuinely see you succeed, they're going to be there, and sometimes, like you said, ask those really tough questions that you are not willing to ask yourself, so that you can get to that next level and excel.
Yeah. And often, Chris, the way I say this, because people ask me like, so why should I work with a coach and whatever? And well, first, you can't have this kind of discussion with your spouse because you're worried that he or she will get worried about you, and it's like, oh, we're going to lose our house or whatever, right? So you can't open up that way, and you don't want to burden them. You can't open up to your employees because you're supposed to be the one with the answers.
That's right.
And
You're the
so,
leader, right?
yeah, right. It's like I can't tell them I don't know what I'm doing. You can't open up to your boss because you're the boss and your boss is an idiot. So, right. And so the question is, where do you turn? And honestly, we don't have the depth of trusting relationships that maybe we had 50 years ago, where you had that wise old aunt or somebody where you could really like expose some of your vulnerability. In the current generation, we feel like we have to have this mask on all the time and act like we have it all together, and it's all about image and stuff. And so image is great, it's necessary, I get that, marketing is fine, but the fact is that sometimes you have to be honest with yourself in order to do the important things, because it's hard. This is not easy stuff.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when somebody finds themselves stuck, hence the reason I've started this entire project of the podcast I think it would be like 3 different options. A coach, so you find somebody that you connect with and you pay them, and that's that their responsibility is to help get you through whatever it is you're struggling with. A mentor, which is similar to a coach, like you said, but there's more of it's an investment of time, and there's an exchange of time versus financial. That's kind of the way I always looked at it. And then
that's good.
A mastermind group, where now it's a group of like-minded people, so perhaps the cost is less than a coach, but you're now getting, like you said, the added benefit there is you get multiple perspective because there's so many different people, and it's like a support group, a support system to help each entrepreneur kind of excel on it. So yeah, I think that's great as far as the solution. What happens though when they feel, because again, you've mentioned this a few times, as humans, we kind of all succumb to the same false beliefs, but they're like, yeah, but I'm unique, I'm different, I got to do this all on my own.
Well, so that excellent question. But I'd separate those 2 things. One is I'm unique and different. Well, and the fact is that that's true. We're all unique and different, and our situations are different, and that's okay. And that's why having a one-on-one relationship can be so valuable, because then it's somebody who gets your situation, and not, mentors, for instance, sometimes they could, or teachers would give you an off-the-shelf solution and say, this is the way to do it. And that's often the teacher-student model, right? And it's not really about what is your situation. It's about, here's a generic solution that works for everybody. But the fact is that we are all unique. So that is absolutely right. But that's different than saying, where should I look for help, and what kind of help do I need? And so the thing I focus on is one-to-one is very powerful, or a few to one. Okay. But, sitting in a classroom of 40 people is an entirely different. It's hard to imagine how that could be individualized, right? But, 5 people, sure. And have it be trusting, having a confidentiality agreement to say, this is a trusting space, and both of us agree to be honest and to protect that, because trust is very, very hard to build, but super easy to destroy. All I need to do is mention to somebody the last thing that I talked about with a client in any detail, and boom, trust is gone, and it'll be gone forever, and it should be, right? And so you've got to have that kind of agreement. And if you call it coach or mentor or group or whatever, there's lots of different names. So look at the attributes of what you're doing here. Okay, if it is your wise old aunt, fabulous. Okay, if you don't want to put the name mentor on it because that's not comfortable for her, or it feels unnatural to you, fine, call it whatever you want to. I don't care.
Guide,
right?
teacher, guru. There's so many different interchangeable terms.
Go for it. Be creative. But is it confidential? Is it trusting? Is it honest?
Mm,
Okay. And then you can make the progress.
right. So, okay, I like that. So it sounds like really, and to kind of try and wrap up the episode,
Hmm.
um, and to be honest, I think this is kind of the whole message that I'm trying to deliver with the podcast is really, if you're feeling like you're stuck or you're challenged, the one thing that you should probably do is start actively looking for those kinds of relationships where you, like you said, there's trust, it's a safe place, there's somebody who wants to see you succeed. It doesn't, like, it could be an aunt, it could be a relative, a friend, it could be a complete stranger that you eventually
Hmm.
build a relationship with. I think that to coming out of this episode is really just take more of an initiative of going to find at least one person that you can start building that kind of relationship with. Would that make
And
sense,
yeah,
Carl? Would you agree? Yeah.
in my mind, that's step one. And then step two is to use that relationship to step back and think through what you're doing.
Right.
Okay, that doesn't mean you need to have a plan for every part of your life. I love spontaneity. That's fabulous. Um, but to step back and just be a little bit more intentional, because all of us are struggling with this just absolute inundation with all of this stuff that happens to us, all of the data that's coming to us, all the issues, all the, uh, you know, just tasks. I mean, there's been all this focus on to-do lists and things like that. And that's fine, but it's just micro tasks is what that's capturing. That's not capturing the step back and saying, am I doing the right thing? Am
Yeah.
I taking my business and my life where I want to go? And even if you do develop a plan, by the way, it'll never work out exactly the way you planned. So you can't be too married to it. But having the plan helps you to make decisions. It helps you to prioritize. This is important, that's not important.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It helps you to develop new relationships, and it helps you to have the impact that you want to have in the world, which I would hope everybody wants to have some kind of impact for their family, for their employees, for their community, for the world, whatever. But to be noticed that you existed and made a difference in people's lives,
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that statement a lot, because I think the mistake, or the false belief that a lot of people have on that subject is that they feel this pressure maybe I need to create an impact on a global scale, on a very large scale, whereas you don't need to. Making an impact to begin with just on yourself, and that becomes this ripple effect, because on yourself, then your family, then your friends, then your community, and then it just starts growing and growing. So really, I can't even remember where I think it's like some old monk saying, but it's really like, start with yourself, and that can eventually lead to impacting the world,
Yeah.
versus focusing on trying to change the world. You're never going to be able to do that. Start
Well, I
with
mean,
yourself.
there's people like, Richard Branson and Mother Teresa and all kinds of people that have big, huge impact on the world. And that's
I
awesome.
would agree, but I would
But
argue that they started
they
small,
started
right?
with themselves. Yeah, absolutely.
Themselves, and then a community, and then the country, and then, yeah, and then eventually they were able to impact change on a global scale. With a lot of people, the way media is nowadays, it's like, oh, look at this person making changes around the world. Well, they started quite small, right? That's the pitfall of what we see, versus, and like that comparison thing, we shouldn't be doing that.
Well, and that's
And,
the phenomenon of the overnight superstar, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So they became a superstar when they got mentioned at the Grammys, and you were so impressed. And never mind that this is year 32 of their
that's right.
career,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
It
But
took them
so
only 32 years to become an overnight success.
yeah. So, part of this is to also learn to be patient and forgiving yourself and others. This is like a
Yeah.
very human experience, and we're all screwing up. We're all screwed up too.
Yeah. Agreed.
So.
Agreed. Awesome, Carl.
I mean,
really
not you and me,
appreciate.
but everybody
Well,
else.
I'll
Yeah.
admit it. I'm messed up. I've got my issues. Thanks, Carl. This was a great conversation. So if anybody wanted to, the audience wants to learn more about you or reach out and get in contact with you, what's maybe the best place for them to look for you?
Fabulous. Yeah, a couple of things. My website is smallfish.us. So I'm part of a group of coaches called Small Fish Business Coaching. And the smallfish.us site is my particular one because I'm the only one in the United States. So I get to basically be the only one there. And then I've got a blog that I'm very, very regular on called valuesbased.biz. Okay, so, and I'm sure you'll put it in the notes. Right?
Yeah, I'll include
so
that in the show notes.
valuesbased.biz, and this is the exact area that I'm delving into much more deeply. And whether it's talking about managing yourself, meeting your goals, working with employees, attracting the right customers, having world impact. I love exploring all of those areas, but it really all starts with the discussion we had today.
Yeah. Great. I really appreciate that, Carl. Thanks for the conversation, and I'm sure we'll talk again sometime down the road.
Okay, fabulous. Thanks so much, Chris.
You're welcome. Take care.
All right, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Get Coached podcast. If you're looking for more information, you can head over to our website, which is getcoachedpodcast.com. You'll find the show notes for this and every other episode there. And if getting actionable advice every week from professional coaches is something you want more of, then make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes.